identify pro-black.
History is about teaching us as a people that we're at war.
I want to speak about the image of our people. We have to be protective of our image.
Our ancestors, they were oppressed, and we are oppressed today.
Hotep, everyone. Assalamu alaikum. Peace to all of you, and welcome to another live broadcast of the Ja and the Kev Show. My name is Ja, and this gentleman that you see to my right is Brother Kev, and tonight we have a very special show for you. We apologize for coming on a little bit behind the time we said we were, but we're on now, so we're going to have to talk about why we've assembled today. But before we say anything else, I want to thank all of those who hung in there with us, who's going to watch this broadcast from the beginning to the end. We truly appreciate all of you. Now, Brother Kev, Counterfit Crowns. Now, this is your baby, and you know I want to help you dress this baby, but how did you come up with that, and what's that all about?
Well, I've been thinking about this for a while. And in the Black community, of course, you know, we address ourselves as kings and queens, but looking at our conditions, just turning around, looking at our current conditions, and I'm wondering where all the rulers are.
Okay.
Where are the people that's actually taking care of us or doing what a king and queen actually do?
Wow.
And to me, I think we toss that word around lightly.
Okay. We do.
But my question to you is, do you think that is deservedly so? Like, well, we need that pick me up from our history, the long history that we've had of being dragged through the mud, and that we need to address each other in a manner in which it uplifts our community.
I see. Well, I think, first of all, that words have consequences. You know, they have consequences. And a lot of times we don't go far enough with it. And it's just like with the Black Power, the slogan, you know, all of the things that we've gone through where we've taken words, you know, what's happening right on, but they don't go far enough. And I think you well addressed it when you said counterfeit, because there's something that's not real about that. And I think we need to talk about some of these psychological consequences, and they're unintended because, like you mentioned earlier, but this is intended to uplift the African American because of our history in America. But I think we need to dive a little bit deeper into seeing, in my aspect, I want to talk about some of the unintended psychological consequences that has caused us, because when you call someone a king or a queen and you just constantly say that and you put nothing with it, Kev, I think that is a detriment if we don't actually dress it and make it what it's supposed to be.
Right. I remember a lyric from Poor Righteous Teachers, one of the hip hop groups that helped me become conscious. And I know in one of the quotes he said, "Everybody's ruling, but nobody's being kings." You know, and to me, it's the opposite. Everybody's kings and queens, but ain't nobody ruling.
Wow. Okay.
You know, and to have that title, and I understand what we're trying to ingratiate each other and build each other up with a title saying, back in the motherland, we were kings and queens. Don't believe what they're telling you about us. But in the motherland, we was a whole lot of things.
Yes.
We were astrologers, we were engineers, builders, you know, scientists. We don't say, hey, what's up, scientists?
Right,
you know, we don't say, hey, what's up, architect? What's up, astrology? You know, astrologer. We don't say that because it sounds crazy because we haven't earned that title.
Right.
And when we saying kings and queens, you could put that on anybody, and that's what seems to be happening.
Exactly.
I have no problem with someone putting that title on someone has done a whole lot for our people, but we're calling common people kings and queens. And sometimes we're calling people kings and queens just for being Black. And they're not ruling. They can't even rule their own household. They can't, you know, that's what does a king or queen do?
Yeah. See, and I think we have to look at it. It's a slogan, you see. It's just a fad. You know, we go through these periods in our lives, especially as African Americans, whenever something comes up, we gravitate to it, and then we beat it to death. But what I'm saying is there is a unintended consequence for this word that we use, king and queen, those words, because it creates a false sense of superiority. In other words, Kev, it means that it instills a superficial sense of who we really are, as you mentioned earlier, but it doesn't talk about self-development. And I think that's where our issue is. We need to develop ourselves, and yet we don't want to develop ourselves, because many times if a person is really interested in this kind of language, you would think we would go deeper. And like you just asked, okay, well, if we're going to be calling ourselves kings and queens, let's go deeper into what made them kings and queens. What are some of the personality traits that they had? What are some of the things that they did to help them move the needle, as opposed to just talking?
Yeah. Now, what you said, I like that. When you're talking about what it took to be that, I prefer to us call ourselves kings and queens instead of the N word and the B word.
Right.
You know, because we still do both, or some of us do both. But I do understand that's more positive, and you would rather have the positivity than the negativity. What does a queen do? Everyone's a queen, you know, and it's fine. That's between that those little nicknames and whatever.
Right.
But when you're talking about a society, we are in a bad place in this country. We are looking for leadership, and if you can't even earn the title, then the title is meaningless.
Yes.
You know, that's what, and I believe you were saying something to that effect.
Exactly, because a lot of times when we look at titles come about with definitions and meaning. And, you know, the meaning, for example, the word king, that's the form. The word queen is the form. In other words, that's the Queen or the King if you're speaking English. But then what does it mean? There was a lot of sacrificing going on, the kings and queens did. And not only sacrificing, they looked out for the well-being of their people. Now, there were many rotten kings and queens, because we're not going to paint a picture that everybody was great, but we're talking about the legitimate ones who fought and stood up for their people. There was a sense of sacrifice. And we don't seem to have that because we're caught up in, like we mentioned at the outset, just saying the title. You know, when you get off the phone, okay, I'll talk to you later, king. Okay, I'll see you later, queen. And some of us are really cunning because we want a woman so bad. If she speaks to us, we'll say, how you doing, queen? And so that makes her feel good, see, because she's been called a bee. She's been called everything other than a child of so-called God. So therefore, she likes that, man. That ingratiates her. And so she wants those kind of words, whereas we have to put more to it than just the words, man.
Right. And I think our women tend to do that more. They call each other a queen more, you know, talking about adjusting her crown and things like that. They will, like, I rarely would call anybody king, you know. It's always brother and sister, you know. I think our women tend to do that more, and for whatever reason. And I know probably the reason is the upliftment.
Right.
But when you don't have to earn a title, you know, you just, if somebody give you that title and you didn't have to earn it, you just gonna wear that title and be okay, well, I'm that, so it's no improvement. It's no responsibility with it.
Yeah. And I know you tease me often when we have the broadcast and you say, John, you know, sometimes people look at you as the bad cop and they look at me as the good cop, and the role reverses sometimes. But I'm gonna go ahead and play that role, because a bad cop, I have to tell the truth in here. And what this does to many of us, Kev, is it basically fosters a sense of delusion. You say, well, what do you mean by delusion? It makes us think that we're somebody that we're not. You see, we're really not that. But in our minds, we look at ourselves as such. And again, when you talk about upliftment and all those great things that we should be doing to each other, we can do that without just calling each other's name. You know, we can do that by sense of showing pride in who we are, showing respect for our elders, showing respect for the youth, showing respect for the young and the old alike, and all of that. But I think we don't take this word far enough. And then when you ask the people who use those concepts, if you say, well, let's talk about some of the great kingdoms. Let's talk about the kingdom of Mali. Let's talk about the Mandinka kingdom. Let's talk about all these people that came before and what they did, the Oyo, and we can go on and on and on. What did they do to maintain a sense of brotherhood and sisterhood? And I promise you, most of us wouldn't know.
Yeah. It's like interesting because when you were talking, I was thinking it's like a lazy way to do all those things without having to do it. Just give them a title, you know, just, hey, I respect you. This is my title. Instead of showing the respect or doing those things that will help you understand that I respect you and that we respect each other, we rather just do it with a title and just keep moving, you know, but doing the work, you know, that's what I'm saying. It's like you are giving someone a title, a meaningless title. It's counterfeit. The crown is counterfeit because we're not ruling anything. If you look at reality, you can look at how we used to be or who we used to be. Everyone in Africa wasn't a king or queen who was running the kingdom. Right. You know, some people had different positions. It was only one king and one queen, and everyone else was subjects of the kingdom or queendom or the tribe or whatnot. So we all wasn't kings and queens, and we all didn't have king and queen qualities. So what is equality? And my thing is, make sure you're labeling somebody that has a quality of leadership, because we are talking about lacking leadership. We always talk about it's not leaders like it used to be, but yet we have more crowns around than we ever had. So that's, to me, that's where it's a conflict. You have to look at reality, where we are in the people as a people. Where are our leaders at? Now, if you say, well, you know what, brother, this brother is a king because he's doing this and doing that, that's fine. But then you can't turn around and call this dude on the corner with his pants sagging, king, come on, king, do this, because he's not earning it. So it diminishes the label when you give it to someone else.
And I'm so glad that you entitled this thing Counterfeit, because we have to look at that. What's real and what's not real. Now, as you just eloquently stated, when we go back to the ancient kingdoms, we can say that the kings and queens of that time and day, many of them, they were real. Okay. A lot of them died, for their people. Right. Okay. But then today it's counterfeit, meaning that the way we call each other that, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't carry any weight. It's just something that we say because we've been accustomed to saying that this is the new fad. And I wonder if it's going to continue to stay, or is it going to be like a fleeting type of word that normally goes away after so many years, based on the fact that we didn't take it to another level. And I don't hear many discussions about how do we take this to another level and break it down like we're doing now, to say, if you're going to call yourself a king, if you're going to call yourself a queen, we're going to accept those terms. There has to come something with that, Kev. There just can't be a name.
Right. It should become a responsibility. If someone's going to, put a crown on your head, then you need to do those things. What did the king or queen? They ran the kingdom.
Yes,
they governed the people. They decided how things were going to happen. The laws, the rules of the land, the laws, who can eat, who can attack, who can defend. You have to defend the kingdom. We are getting attacked, and we are not getting together to defend. You can't even get anybody together now, just because you could call somebody to do a rally or a riot or a protest. Don't make you a king or queen.
I'm gonna ask you this question. I'm gonna cut you off and ask you this question. I don't care what y'all say about my demeanor, because this is how we do it. Because this question is here, and I gotta ask you. Why do you think personally? We all have our beliefs as far as why people do what they do, but I'm going to ask you this, and you just speak from your heart. There are many reasons, but if you could say, here's the most important reason that I believe, that Kevin believes, that people are addressing each other like that from the counterfeit perspective, what would you say that would be? Why are we doing this, man? Why are we not having these discussions?
I think at a certain point, there's probably something needed, but it's needed in a juvenile way.
Okay.
It's because I think that's what you do with a kid.
Okay.
You address them, hey, you're this, or you're a princess, and you're a superhero. You do that, and it builds them up. It builds up confidence. And we are people that probably needed confidence building from what we've been through. Like I said, we've been drugged through the mud. We've been torn down. They've even taught us to call ourselves derogatory terms. Sometimes women, when you get by yourself, you're gonna say, I'm this B,
right.
Or even no matter how, even if you're not mad, you say, ooh, girl, instead of saying girl, you say, ooh, B, let me tell you what happened, and it's like we've been taught that. So, and I think so to counter that, we've caught, like they did with the Black Power movement, they were saying black is beautiful. It becomes a slogan.
Right.
My beautiful black whatever, my beautiful black brother, my beautiful, and everybody's not beautiful, but because you're black and you've been taught you wasn't beautiful just for being black, I'm gonna call you beautiful just because you are black. I'm gonna tell you that you're a king because you've been told you was everything else because you were black. I'm gonna call you a king just because you're black. And sometimes when you're trying to balance the scale, if something is heavy on this side, you go overboard to make it just. And I think that's what happens with us.
That's great.
But at what point are we done trying to do the pick-me-ups like a kid do, and start, addressing
I don't think we're going to do that, Kevin. I hate to be the guy that brings the bad news, but I don't think it's ever going to be a time that you were going to ask that we're going to stop it, because when you have low self-esteem as an individual, when you think that you're worth nothing, when you think you're lower than a worm, and you've been done wrong all your life, socially, educationally, politically, and any other kind of way, it's hard to bring that person back up to a sense of self-pride and who they really are, especially when that person is not interested in studying and researching who we are. See, because we wait for a certain time of the year to come around before we want to stick our chest out. And after February or after June, the chest goes back in. And so it's a repetitive cycle that goes on. And this ideal of kings and queens, just for the sake of saying it, it's shallow, man. It lacks depth. It lacks cultural awareness. It lacks education. We don't want to learn about it. And that's my whole thing about the unintended consequences. We need to learn. Every other person normally tries to learn, or people, I should say, they try to learn about concepts, but we just take it because of how we have been conditioned.
Right. And what I got from that you just said, we have to, it comes with that title, it comes a responsibility. Don't just give that title to anyone just for being Black. This is where I think we should graduate to. If you're going to use that term, I have no problem. Like, it's just like if you're in a relationship, you're going to say, well, this is my queen. But you can't turn around and call somebody else your queen and somebody else your queen, because then it means nothing to say that this is my queen. You know, now when you see somebody that learns about our history and is willing to teach and try to lead a people, I have no problem with you saying this brother is a king, this sister is a queen. I have no problem calling Angela Davis or Sada Shakur queens, you know, because of the work that they put in. You could call Malcolm X a king if you want. I mean, Martin Luther King, you could call him a king or whomever you want, but if they put in the work, that's different. Because it was something that was happening here, and it was like the movement was happening, Black Lives Matter type thing, and I know it was an incident that happened locally in San Antonio, but the family was like, this is our Martin Luther King, and it was a guy that was trying to do some work, and she said, this one is my Malcolm X. And I'm thinking, like, these brothers ain't Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. They're nowhere near that. Because if you ask the brother that's supposed to be Malcolm X to sit there and talk to a group of people, they could get people together to go to a boycott or a rally. And that's not all Martin Luther King did. That's not all Malcolm X did. He didn't do any of the rally and boycott stuff. But he spoke. When he had people together, he was able to speak and talk to them in an intelligent way. So these brothers can't do that. They can't motivate a people. They can't inspire a people. They could say, you know, F the police, or you know, hell no, you know, give a justice or peace. That's like, those are not Martin Luther King and Malcolm X qualities. But then when somebody said that, I'm like, you got the wrong impression of Martin and Malcolm, because Martin and Malcolm was a lot more than what these brothers are doing. So what you're doing, you're downgrading the things that they did. And this is what I'm saying with kings and queens.
And that's true, because it has been reduced now to just a greeting. You know, sometimes people greet you as a king, you know, hey, what's up, king? But that's as far as it goes, because they're still affected by that psychological damage, you see. And this is why we want people to call us. I think this discussion, it warrants some type of verbal discussion. So we want you to call us at 361-405-6111. I'll say it again, 361-405-6111. 6111.
And if you can think that we are totally wrong, it's nothing wrong if anybody say, you know, I disagree. I think that we should label these things. Some people label themselves, I'm queen, mother, this, or whatever. And you can say, I think it's nothing wrong with it, but we just want to have that discussion.
That's all.
You know, I'm not going to say, well, you know, you're totally wrong, or you could call us and tell us we're totally wrong. We accept your opinion, and we could keep moving and discuss that.
Yeah, because I think there should be some type of accountability. And I know this is what you're saying. This is what I'm saying. Along with those words come accountability. And that's one of the things that we don't like to discuss often. And I am down for my people. And I love Africa. I love the things that happened in the past. I love all of that. I love the ancient civilizations. You know, I can go on and on and on and on about them. But sometimes we get stuck there, Kev. We get stuck, man. We keep forgetting that if you live in this country, regardless of what we think about the country, you are an American citizen. Now that sounds mean to some people's ears, because they don't want to do anything but speak the words. And we're not knocking our history. We're not knocking up in Africa. But there's a lot of us in this country, man, that we are citizens of the United States, and we need to help the people that look like us in the United States instead of just going around calling each other names to make us feel good.
Right. We should be proud. That's why I said it's like a juvenile thing, because sometimes you're saying things just to make somebody feel good. But if you want to make somebody feel good, you want to help people feel good, then build in your community.
Yeah.
You know, the titles is one thing, but you're not doing the work. I'm gonna thank some of y'all that showed up. Coretta, appreciate you. She said great topic. Sakina, she gave the greetings. Walaikum assalam, sister. Tanya Lewis, I appreciate you showing up. She said titles are to inspire, but real action, who knows what's effective. I appreciate that comment. Barbara Royal chimed in. She said, Hotep, I appreciate you showing up. Nikita, she chimed in. She said, hey, brothers, I appreciate you, sister, for showing up. And Barbara gave a comment. She said, when our brothers are king, it's because of the intellectual level that I regard them with, teacher, philosopher, etc. of the mind. I appreciate that. And that's what I'm saying. You can have a reason for calling somebody a king, but if don't call this dude over here hitting this blunt on the corner a king too. That's what I'm saying. It's sometimes we're tossing it around, and when you toss something around, it loses value.
Yes, it
That's
does.
what I'm saying. And if a brother is a philosopher, a teacher, a leader, then I have no problem with you ingratiating them with some type of title and said, hey, king, whatever, blah, blah, blah. You know, I have no problem with that. But I appreciate the comment, and I understand what you're saying. I appreciate, Tanya, what you're saying. You know, the titles to inspire. But go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, but we also have to look at community. You know, in other words, if you're going to be called, young lady's going to be called a queen and all of that, there has to be some type of communal or self-improvement. See, we got to talk about that, Kev. And I think sometimes we don't want to stick our hands into this thing because it's a beehive. So what am I really saying? I'm saying that if we're going to go around and ingratiate ourselves, and we're okay with that, the person that we're talking about they must be willing to be able to transform themselves into a better person, or the community in which they live in. They must be able to support Black businesses. They must be able to be very positive. They shouldn't be selling dope in our community. They shouldn't be standing on the corner with their butt showing, like you mentioned earlier. They shouldn't be beating up these women every other day. But yet, because we don't look at the people that we're talking about the way we should, everybody that you see, if they look like us, they're kings and they're queens, and that's not true, and it shouldn't be true. And we've got to push back some kind of way.
Nobility. It should be a sense of nobility. You should carry yourself a certain way. I mean, every king or queen I knew of, whether they were a good ruler or not, they were, when they walked in, people gave them respect. You know, they commanded respect. Some of them demanded respect, but there's a difference. It's a man, a real person that earns his respect. He doesn't have to ask you for it.
Right.
She doesn't have to ask you for it. Your actions will speak of commandment of respect. So this is what I'm also saying. Every woman is not a queen. Every dude is not a king. A lot of dudes that try to teach, they're not kings. To me, you have to sacrifice for the people.
Yes, sir.
You have to build. You gotta educate people.
That's right.
You know, like I say, that's governing. You govern your people. So that means you was in control of the education of the people. You were in control of the nourishment of the people, the nourishment of the land, even how the kingdom ran. You were responsible. How you can't be that if you can't, you know, inspire anyone.
True.
Or try to lead or try conditions and be strategic and say, well, this is what we need to do.
Yeah, that's true, Kevin. And I think too, flattery leads to delusion. In other words, again, we like to hear words that make us feel good. And it goes back to what you talked about with me a while ago about sometimes we're like children. You know, we like those little things, those accolades. We like that. But it leads to delusion. When I say it leads to delusion, it makes you think you're somebody that you're not. And if you think you're somebody that you're not going to do the responsible things that an adult should do. So if all the time you are called the king and you're called the queen and it gets to your head and you're deluded, you're going to think that that's who you are just by name, but you're not going to put anything with it. And that's what I'm saying. We don't want to put anything with that to make sure that the words line up with the character. See,
it's a frivolous phrase, basically a frivolous title. Counterfit crowns. You know, that's what I always thought of it as.
That's good.
it's a counterfeit crown. It doesn't mean it. You can wear it, but you have no power. So if you have no power, you can have power without a crown. You know, you don't have to be a king or a queen or someone put a crown on your head. You can have power. Martin Luther King had power without having a crown. Malcolm X had power. W.E.B. Du Bois had power.
Yes, sir.
We had some great people that didn't have this king or queen title. I could go down to the name of women also, but they didn't have this king or queen title, but they had the work.
Yeah. And then that's where the rubber meets the road. And you know, I think again, if we would just delve deep into some of the things that these kings and queens had to go through to survive, and emulate some of the things they did. And I go back to sacrificing, you know, sacrificing for the young, you know, sacrificing for the old, doing the basic things that life that should give us, that we should be a people as a community of people, that we're interested in upliftment of our communities and doing the work, as you're saying, doing the work to better our communities. Then I don't care what you call me. And I'm not angry if you don't call me that, because I know who I am. But some of us, we want that. And it's become a fad. And again, it goes back to that childishness, that mentality where we hear somebody say it, and then I hear you call some other brother or sister that. And instead of me investigating that word and looking deep as to why did you call that person that, I'm just going to start calling people that because I saw you do it. So now I'm just mimicking, and now it's becoming everybody's catching it. Exactly. Becomes a fad. And that's what it is.
That becomes a thing of endearment amongst our people. And another thing that we do, I mean, we have, you know, you have the 5% nation, so they call each other God. Or you have these people that say, well, the black woman is God.
Okay.
You know, so if you're going to bestow that upon, that's the highest praise you could give somebody, to say that they're a God. But then if all these black women are God, and I'm looking at some black women that don't deserve a title of queen, and you're calling her a God regardless because she has the ability to create, then I'm gonna say the same thing. No, everybody, that's not, if that's who you think a God is.
You know, I'm going to say this again, and I don't care if you people that's watching this broadcast say, Jahi, you are very rude, you cut Brother Kev off tonight, but these things have to be said, and we just going back and forth. But I'm going to tell you something. The reason why some of us call women gods and some of us call brothers kings and queens and all of that is because they have a big butt. And a man is trying to get next to a woman. Let's tell it like it is. So he's saying, what's up, queen? And she's saying, oh, I'm a queen. So, you know, and he's trying, that's a line, man. That's a line to come on, you see, because no one calls her that. And she feels good. Same with the man, you know, he's been done wrong at his job. If he has a job, he's been treated like crap. And here a woman says, hi, king. And then his chest sticks out now because now he's hearing something that makes him feel good inside. So basically, it's one of those flirtation type things. And it's been reduced to that. It's not serious. It's childishness at its best. Not all of it, but a lot of it is. And we don't like to look at the childishness aspect of it. We want to get to the serious part. But a lot of this, Kevin, is just rhetoric. It doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, I agree with you. I appreciate Coretta, she said should go back to calling each other brothers and sisters. This is something that when I tell this story many times. When I took my daughter to college in Atlanta. She was going to university, Clark University in Atlanta, and that's the Triangle, the Spelman, Morehouse, and all this stuff. So all that whole atmosphere is HBCU.
Okay.
And I went there, and you got the movies where you see the parents had a truck or the car packed up with the suitcase, and the school opened. It's like everybody's taking people to their dorm, parents, but it was always brother, sister. They didn't call me sir. It was just like, brother, can you help this sister do this? And I brought that home. I felt like, man, we brothers and sisters here. And I took that home with, I brought it here, and when I started dressing people, and people were like, oh, like what's up with that? Yeah. Oh, now I'm your sister, huh? It's like, no, but it didn't mean anything derogatory, but it was like, brother, and even I greet somebody, I don't have to know him. I have no problem calling you my brother. Yeah, exactly. Because we have siblings that's trifling. We have siblings that's good. And I don't have, it don't matter, but you're my brother because of how you look. And this is something I was trying to get people to develop it where I was coming from, because I seen it and I heard it. People that didn't know me, brothers, man, dudes to dudes, like football players was there helping people. It's, brother, you need help?
Yeah.
This brother right here gonna help you.
Yeah.
And these were younger people addressing me, not sir, excuse me, sir, da da da. And I'm like, man, that's really that's it. Sir is respect.
Right.
That's taught somebody to say. But when you call me your brother,
that's that connection, man.
It's
it really is.
It's really different.
And if we study African culture, we know that many of the African kingdoms, a husband would not call his wife honey or dear. Okay, that's all Eurocentric, and we're not tripping about that. But it's just he would call his. I was reading some of the ancient Egyptian pharaohs, the Egyptian kings, potentates, and they called their wives sisters. And I said, wow. And then some of the wives would call their husbands brothers. And so that concept of brother and sister, that goes back a long way. And I go back to the teachings. When we look at the teachings of the ancients, we would see that a lot of this stuff that we're saying now is necessary. Because if I ask most of the people that call each other kings and queens, and I'm not trying to belittle anyone's intelligence, and I'm asked questions about the kingdoms, what are some of the kingdoms that you're patterning your king and queen calling of another person? Where are you getting that from? You're not going to mention the ancient Ethiopian Empire. You're not going to mention the Carthaginian Empire. You're not going to mention the Comitian Empire. You're not going to mention the Oyo Empire. You're not going to mention the Mandinka Empire. You're not going to mention any of these types of kingdoms, but yet we say that. And so when we ask people, I heard you call that sister queen. What empire did you get that from? You're going to say, what empire? What are you talking about? It's flattery.
And the crazy thing about that is, in Africa, they didn't use that term.
No, they didn't speak
that's an
English.
Right. That's an English term.
So
if you use a word, if we say, well, you know what, let's call each other this word, and you could say, well, this is a Mali word, or this was the Mali word for king or ruler or whomever, the leader of a tribe. Before colonization, there was like 300 tribes, 3,000 tribes in Africa. They all had a leader of the tribe. They had a different name that they may call that leader.
Exactly.
So if you want to say, come up with a name, just show, flex. You know, that's what the thing. Everybody was flexing back in the day. I know about this person. I know about this person. I know about Stevie Biko, whomever. But tell me an African word and make that. Hey, I'm calling you. Whatever word, whatever.
See, just like the Nubian, this is the thing where you see a woman and you say, man, I'm talking to me a Nubian. So she feels good because she has some kind of ideology of the concept of Nubia. But, you say, well, what other words can you speak in that language to show her that you appreciate her? And the answer is zilch. What about the Badarian culture? What about the Nakata culture? We can go on and on and on to support the very thing you just said, but it's gotten to the point now where, man, where people just say things just for the sake of saying things.
And that's when it becomes counterfeit. That's when it becomes meaningless. Like I say, if you give that title to someone that's earned it, for whatever criteria you're going to say, I have no problem. I'm not even going to. But when I look at somebody that don't know our history, now it's like the Egyptians or the ancient Kemet, I guess Pharaoh was a title of that. I don't know who gave them that title, but we don't say, hey, Pharaoh, we don't do that, because that don't sound right, but it only sounds right when you're talking into the English, what we got from the Europeans, king, queen, blah, 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 You
couldn't have said it better, man. It keeps us ignorant of the historical context and the facts of the greatness of our people. Because like you mentioned earlier, which is something that a lot of people don't want to say, everybody was not a king in Africa. Everybody was not a queen in Africa. And I know we say it because these are terms of endearment, but a lot of times it ignores the struggle. See, we're in a fight. You said this at the outset, and I wanted to dive into it. Even though we can call ourselves what we want to call ourselves, we are still being oppressed every day. We're still being treated like second-class citizens. You mentioned before we went on the air how all this stuff is designed. And these Europeans, for the most part, they're set. They have it set up to where no matter what aspect of life you talk about, they're on top of us. See, and we're not trying to remove them because we're too busy calling each other kings and queens and not saying what does a king and queen do. Because a lot of us are just going through the motions.
Yeah, if you were actually a king or a queen, you couldn't imagine yourself living in the conditions that you are living in. You would be doing something to rectify the situation that you and your people are finding themselves in. These are the people that I'm saying are worthy for a title. I don't even think most of the people that are doing that type of work want you to call them anything but who they are, because their name becomes bigger than the word king or queen. You know, when we talk about, I could say Angela and people could know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You know, some people, you could just say one word, one name, Malcolm. People know who you're talking about. That means more than some king anywhere to me. Martin, that means more. You know, Du Bois, I could say Frederick. In the context that I'm talking, you know which Frederick I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You know, and these are titles. You could give people titles, but do the work. The real work doesn't need a title on it. People are going to, your name, it doesn't matter. Your name will carry that weight. Now, I understand it's people you don't know. And like, I think it is psychological. That's something that we have to deal with, because I understand it was meant to rectify a situation that we were in.
And see, what my whole issue with it is this: fads come and go, slogans come and go. This slogan, and I may be wrong, but I think I'm right. This one is not going anywhere anytime soon, Kev. It's not going anywhere soon. It's not going anywhere anytime soon, I should say. And the reason why it's not going to go anywhere soon, because brother and sister, okay. Yeah, okay, you my brother, you my sister, you know, a Mr., Mrs., okay, sir, okay. But a king and a queen? Oh my goodness, let me fix your crown, brother. Fix your crown, sister. So to me, that it's going to be around when we're long gone, only because of what we have gone through and because of the esteem that we have. If we told everyone to put those words away just for the sake of trying to concentrate on ourselves and self-improvement, you would have a problem. You have a serious problem.
Well, I think it's a group of people that's going to carry that, and they've been somehow put into the category of thinking that that's the group of people, as in the category that this is how we should address each other. And they're not thinking of why. I understand, like I said, we have been called everything under the sun that's negative,
right? Just
because of who we are and how we look. And sometimes you have to offset that. You have to do something. You have to build a people up that's so low that you're giving them a title that's so high. But at what point do we get past that and think about, so now you got to go deeper. You have to dig deeper. And those titles don't begin to not mean anything if you're not doing work, or you're looking at our conditions. And to me, it's an embarrassment. What do you think those people that are oppressing us care about you calling yourself a king if you bowing down and kissing my boot, or kissing whatever else? You know, if I got you at the job doing whatever the hell I tell you to do when I tell you to do it, you know, how do you think this is your king? You know, that's a mockery to them. They don't care about your titles.
Right.
The thing that they're going to be concerned about is the work that you're putting in. That's going to be a threat to them. Our crowns, counterfit crowns, it's not a threat to them. That's not a threat to the system.
No.
The work that when they see you putting in work, then they eyebrow, you're going to get their attention. They're going to try to shut that down. They're going to find out who you are.
It's superficial confidence is what it is. Right. It's a superficial confidence. And I don't know, but this is rhetorical, but I just want you to think about this. Where we have gone wrong as a people, as adults, is at some point in our lives, we've gotten to the point of the age where we do not like to research and study. We will not we'll go to certain buildings and hear a lot of nonsense. But as far as researching, looking at principles, applying them to our lives as adults, we just will not do it, Kev. So you can shake the cage and rattle it all you want to. I can smack on the cage and make noise. But it's a personal situation where we adults, we're going to have to go back and sit down and begin to be taught the truth of what all this stuff means. Because now I'm going to ask questions as a philosopher. I like to ask you, when you say things, I keep hearing you use a certain word, brother. What are you using that word for? And then you're going to explain to me. And I'm going to have more questions, and you're going to have more answers, and we're not going to fight because I'm trying to outshow you as far as my knowledge. But I really want to know. So now that I know, when I say it, someone's going to ask me, and I'm going to be able to articulate why I'm saying that, as opposed to I heard somebody say something, and now I'm just saying it for the sake of saying it.
Right. And people take that as a challenge. Why are you challenging me on what I say? And I've had people do that because I'm inquisitive. Like you say, I'm philosophical. I like to build.
Yeah.
And we should feed each other.
Yeah.
I know when it was a time, like I said, when I was listening to the groups that had me becoming conscious, because they were telling me something and I was eating that. I was like, it wasn't shake your butt type stuff, or I'm a bust a gat, bust a cap in you. And it was like, they were talking and they was naming names that I didn't know. So that was food. And then when we talked, and what happened is when we came around our other people, we wanted to say, this is what I know. Do you know about this? We were feeding each other, just like as if you're wanting food and you sit around the campfire or the tribe and everybody's eating, somebody's feeding you something. The elder is talking about something and everybody's listening and learning. And that's something so we were learning from each other. I didn't always have to pick up a book. I was interested in what you knew that I didn't know. So when you said something I didn't know, you got my attention because I was eager to learn. This is where we have to get back to, wanting to learn and not just, if I ask you, well, brother, what was the name? Where'd you get that from?
Right.
And I'm looking for references. Maybe I might research it. Now, if you just got it from somebody, I heard my uncle say it, then it don't mean anything to me.
And that's the challenge, because there should be, the way it should have gone is, we've heard the idea of kings and queens, everybody's saying it. There should be some type of inquisitive nature where we want to say, let's get together as a group of people and let's investigate and let's find out where this came from. Let's find out the intention of it. Let's find out what we can take from that to better our lives, to become better people in the society, whether we're called that or not. What are the characteristics? What are the qualities of these people that we're calling kings and queens that we don't know about, as opposed to just using it? And I think most of us don't want to do what you just said earlier. And that is, we don't want to sit down and learn from each other because we think we know everything. And this is a problem. It's problematic. And it's going to always be a problem when you can't tell an adult anything. And that's really sad.
And I had a conversation with a friend of mine, and they asked me, like, I think I was talking about what people bring to the table. This conversation that people bring into the table, but it wasn't my table. It was just like, to me, like a table that I have, if it's something like that, I could say, well, what do Ja bring to the table? When I talk to you, I'm like, okay, I'm getting something from this. This brother can feed me something, or this sister does this, or this something. And I was like, everybody I know feeds me in a certain way because I'm interested in people. I want to know what you think and why you think that. I don't care. I'm not going to belittle what you think or whatever the extent. I don't care what extent you have knowledge of something. I'm not going to say, well, this person is a dummy or idiot. I want to know. I'm hungry to know people. So everybody offers something to me. You bringing something to this table, and the table is a smorgasbord. It's a buffet. I want to know what you brought, what makes you think the way you think, or what your journey has been. And I'm going to put that into my group of knowledge about people. This is how people go about doing this. If I could ask every person in here that uses king or queen, or like the sister commented, I know why you use it, and I understand. So, and I'm going to take that and do something with it. I'm gonna say, this is why we're doing that. So if you could tell me why you like to use the word, then call in and let us know. This is feeding our community.
And I just want to say one warning to us is that when we hear that word said of us, don't take that word as if we are something that we're not, that we're better than who we think we are. Don't let that, as we say, go to the head and make us feel royal. And then we start looking down on people because we've been told we're kings and queens and we want to have our own utopia. We've got to go back to, okay, you call a person that, I may call a person that, you may call me that, but you have a reason for doing that. So I have to look at, what can I do to better my life? It's all about self-improvement. It's all about the community work. And then when it's all said and done, all those people that we mention on this broadcast, every time we talk about a subject matter, these people looked at themselves, they looked at their communities, and they sacrificed to make this a better place, a better world to live in.
Yeah. That was pretty good, man. You had me a whole lot of thoughts going through my head. And unfortunately, I jumped out too. I think that we have to look at where we're at, who we're up against, and what it's going to take to get out of these predicaments. And it's not going to be anything quick. It's not going to be any quick resolution or solution to our problems, but we have to begin to build with one another, respect one another, breathe that. Like they always say, speak it into existence. So when you say, well, I'm going to call you a king because I want to speak it into existence, you could speak things and think that's just a saying. Speaking something into existence because we would have been said freedom.
A long time.
We've been saying justice a long time, and we haven't spoken that any of those things into existence in this country or around the world for our people. So speaking something, you could say that's the reason we want to speak things into existence. I want this person to hear that they're excellent. If this person is getting F's or F student, lazy student, don't want to read, right? You can't just say, well, you're a genius and the thing's gonna get better because they're a genius.
Wow.
You have to put the work in. That person, you have to teach that person how to put the work in.
Yeah.
If a person is a genius, then you call that person a genius. You don't call everyone in the classroom a genius because then being a genius means nothing.
Right. I think sometimes too that one thing we haven't talked about that I definitely want to touch on now, and I want your insight on this, is when we call each other kings and queens the way we have been doing, the youth hear this. They listen and they see and they observe. And I think to some degree it confuses them, because when you become 15, 16, 17, 18, you begin to see that there's racism. There's a lot of things going on in this country, limited resources and the likes. But yet I hear my people calling each other kings and queens, but yet my lifestyle is not like that. I don't even have a job. I'm struggling. My parents don't have a job. My parents are struggling. My parents are working. We're barely making ends meet. But I thought a king and a queen was supposed to be over an empire, see? So it's not making sense to the youth. Instead of teaching the youth, we just say it and we don't look at the consequences, the unintended consequences, that the youth sit back and listen to this and they begin to say, this doesn't make sense because you're saying one thing, but my reality is something totally different.
And it's one thing to say we used to be kings and queens and stuff, and one day we shall be that again. See, that means that there's work to be put in.
Oh yeah.
But not that we are that now because we used to be, because like you said, I look at reality. I'm looking at where I'm at. This is what a queen, this is how a king, this is how, because you can look at another king, you can look at the king of England right now, those, counterfeit crowns too, but they got money and they got power and they got prestige behind it. You look at kings and queens other places, and this is what a black queen and king is, compared to them.
Right.
I'm not living like that. So you could be the king of the gypsies, whatever. You could have a band of thieves and be the king of the thieves. But if it doesn't have any weight to it, then what does it mean? What credibility does it have? Whoever you're ruling, and I mean, some people can't even rule their own, balance their own checkbook or bank account, and here you are, you begging for money, but you're a king or queen.
Right.
Or you begging for a job, and you may not think of it as begging, but you need a job and you're asking for someone to hire you. That's not royalty.
Let those concepts that we talk about, the king and queen, let that, when you're called that or when I'm called that, let that build us to become better people as opposed to hyping us up. See, because if we use it for hype, that's all it's going to be. It's just loud. Hey, king. Hey, queen. Oh, what's happening, y'all? No. It's not just about that. It's about, okay, I have to do something in my life to help my community, to help my family, to help the people that look like me, to do something that's going to bring about a change, whether it's socially, economically, politically, whatever other kind of way there can be. I have to take that word. I have to own it. If I'm going to be called that, I should tell people I'm going to own that. You call me a king, Brother Kevin? Okay. Why you call me that king? So you start telling me why, and I'm going to say, you know what? I appreciate those insights. I want to build on what you just said. And so therefore, when I'm called that, I know that this is not just to hype me up. It's to say I'm encouraging you, man. I'm not trying to put you on no pedestal. I'm just saying you're doing the work of a great person. So, and don't let that go to your head. But see, we don't say that. We just call a person that name, and then they start internalizing it. Then they start buying these fancy clothes and they start wearing these loud colors because they think that this is who they really are. But they don't even want to look back into the culture of the way people were and how they became what they were.
Right. And like you said, when you call in a young person that and they start coming of age, they know you're just calling them that for a reason. I mean, when I used to coach, I used to tell my kids, their mamas and grandmas be at the game. They cheering them on the hardest. And I tell them at practice, the biggest liars out there is your grandma and mama. They're going to love you whether you have a good game or not and you make mistakes. I said, they're going to tell you, baby, you did good. And you're going to know that you did the wrong thing. And you fumbled and you caught. But it's like they're going to tell you no matter what. And I tell them, realize that. Don't realize when you have a bad game. Some people gonna tell you whatever you want to hear.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
something like you said, but a man and a woman, sometimes he gonna tell you
He trying to
whatever
get
he
something.
wanted,
Yeah.
you want to hear.
Yeah.
But you have to be bigger than that at one point to understand. You only telling me this for love, and it may be sincere. You may love me, and you're supposed to say that. And these kids gonna realize that y'all are this are just words that y'all throwing around.
Yeah,
This is what the main thing. We don't want to throw around crowns, because if you're throwing crowns around here, you get one, you get one, you get one, you get one. Then it means nothing.
The reason the reason why I'm smiling like a Cheshire cat, Kev, is because I thought about something that happened to me in high school. Actually, it was junior high, and then it carried on in high school. One of my friends, we were playing, and he called my nickname is Icky. My family called me Icky since I was a baby. So my friends at school, one of my friends started calling me Ick Town. And I said, okay, that sounds pretty good. So all my other friends started calling me Ick Town. And guess what I did? I went out, every shirt I can get, I put Ick Town on the shirt, I put it on the back, I put it on my shoes. Everywhere I went, I was known as Ick Town. And one lady asked me, I was trying to talk to this female, and she said, can I ask you a question? I noticed you always got Ick Town. I said, well, that's what they call me. I'm Ick Town, She said, what does that mean? I couldn't even give an answer to that. I took that crap, Kev, and took all that stuff and got it off that shirt. But see, I had been duped, because they called me that. I thought I was really Ick Town. I wasn't no Ick Town. I was a chump, man. Was wet behind the ears, green, dumb, unintelligent, didn't know what life was about. But it took somebody like that to ask one simple question. What is Ick Town? And I started looking at my shirt, and I remember everybody calling me that. They just called me that to make me feel good. See, and that people are being called kings and queens just like that. So now we got that to our head. But what is a king? What is a queen? See, those are the questions we have to answer.
Yeah. Is it needed? Is it something that we as a people really need, or we as our young people really need that? Because the reality of when we get older, we look at where we're at and what's happening. When you're younger, you're trying to strive for something. Once you get older, you settle into who you are and where you're at. Most of us do that. The hunger is no longer there. And young people, the sky is the limit. Maybe we're trying to push them to the sky and say, take it to the limit. And then you don't just give them a title. You say, we used to be this. This is what we can become. This is what you have the power to be.
Good teaching.
Not you are that now.
Right.
You have the power to be that. Because if I'm saying, okay, I got the power to be king, and then I'm looking at the king that y'all talking about, or y'all kings and stuff, I'm not seeing anything royal about it. I'm not seeing the riches. I'm seeing you struggling to pay bills. I'm seeing, you complaining about police brutality.
Right.
I found out grandpa was complaining about police brutality. I'm looking at movies and seeing that we've been getting our butt kicked sideways for decades. And it's like, well, where's the kingdom at?
Wow.
It's like almost like I bring up the religion thing, where you're promised the kingdom.
Okay.
You're promised the kingdom that you can't see. So now, we can't live on faith. We have to live on reality here and what's happening. Not saying that there's no kingdom someplace else or whatever people believe. I'm saying, but in reality, you have to live while you're here.
Yeah.
And you should be wanting to strive to get there. Whatever there is for you. If you want to be what we used to be, then you have to understand, you have to study where we were at to get back to where we were. And if you don't have you can have a dream. If you don't have a plan, then it's going to remain a dream.
Yeah.
If you don't lay out the groundwork to make it come to fruition, that goal and a plan is more than a dream. But we're just working on dreams.
Yeah,
we're not setting goals for ourselves or for our youth and say, you know what, you're going to be an astrologer. You're going to be a chemist. You're going to be something else. You got the ability to be. You could give them all those things. You got the ability to be these things. With us, we do it with football. You're going to be a basketball player one day. And we give frivolous dreams that they may not even be able to reach. But if they study and they do the work, you tell them you can be whatever it is you want to be.
And it encourages individualism over collective work. See, because a king, if you call me king and I'm that's all I ever hear, then I feel like I don't have to do anything because I'm over a kingdom. See, whereas if you understood that if you were right, you would know that you every little bit that we do helps. And you have a role to play in society. I have a role to play in society. All of us have a role to play in society. But if all of us are kings, all we're doing is sitting over our kingdom, looking down, telling other people what to do. Right. See, and it gives us a false sense of focusing on ourselves. And that's what I want to harp on tonight. I hope I've come across that way, because we've got to work on ourselves. We have too many issues internally than to be letting somebody pump our head up with something that is just far-fetched when you really look at it, especially when you don't really understand what that means. You don't understand what it means.
It becomes a placebo.
Yeah.
Somebody's giving you something, a title. In this case, it's a title that's counterfeit. It doesn't mean anything if we're not putting in the work. Everybody's ruling, nobody's being kings.
Yeah.
Or everybody's kings and queens and nobody's really ruling.
Right,
rule commandeer your community. That's what some of us are not even commandeering our household. We have to have those type of goals in mind before we get back to what we used to be. You have to take the steps, be willing to take the steps to get to where we used to be. You could build us up with artists, titles and things like that.
Right.
But I want to see work. That's my whole point of this Counterfit Crowns. It does it because I don't see people working to rule or to govern our people, to lead our people out of the bondage that we are in this country.
This is a great discussion, and this is not going to be the last time that we'll revisit this discussion, but this has been an excellent explanation and insight to delve into the intricacies of the word king and queen, the way we're using it today. I think we should continue to talk about these issues that's going to help make us better people. This broadcast can be seen every first and third Tuesday of the month at 6:30 Central Time, 6:30 Central Time, I should say, and 7:30 Standard Time. So what I'm trying to get to, Kev, is these kinds of discussions are not really liked a lot. People don't want to talk about these things, but I'm glad that on our broadcast, we talk about subject matter that sometimes it may be uncomfortable, but it's like medicine, some of it. You take it and it's good for you once it starts working in your system. And I hope those who are watching this broadcast really understand that all we're saying today is, if you're going to use any concept to help somebody to become better, then don't just use it flippantly. Make sure that you can even put into it where if I call you a king and I say, Kev, you know why I call you a king? You say, no, brother, I don't know why. Then I can begin to express to you what I see and what kingdoms and kings did and how you're benefiting in the community. And then you will say, okay, now it makes sense, Ja. Now, if I can't, you say, well, Jahi, why are you calling me a king? I don't know, bro. You just a king.
Most of the time, we ain't going to lie. We're going to be like, we're going to accept that. That's my crown. I mean, I don't have any men calling me king. I think that's a prevalent in the female part of our community to throw that word around. And I don't mind anybody using it because I understand why we do it. But I'm just saying we have to think more. We have to shoot for something higher than that, than just titles and crowns and stuff like that. We have to build on reality and where we at. And if you calling me a king, I don't mind it. I'm not going to get, I'm not going to cringe or nothing like that. Right. But I'm saying all of us are not doing the work of kings.
Right.
If you want it to mean something, then you can't just pass it around.
Yeah, I think we should investigate these terms before we start using them. Investigate why we say what we say. Investigate the meaning of the word. And then let's talk about the meaning. Does the character line up with the meaning? And if it does, that's fine. If it doesn't, then hold on to it, because we're all still in the process,
Okay. Well, that's all I have for the show, man. I appreciate everyone that showed up, that gave comments. Hopefully we can have a better show next time. I appreciate Mary showing up and Karen. Appreciate you. She said nice topic. And Coretta said action versus titles. Well said, brothers. I appreciate it.
All right, let's get out of here.
Peace.